Hey there, welcome back to Science Flixtion. My name is Salim Suterwalla, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host and friend, Carl Eames. Carl, how are you tonight?
I'm doing all right. It's a little restless, but we're gonna have a nice chat about some Black Panther tonight. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, it should be a good show. We have mostly focused on that. Um, Nothing other big stuff going on. We just have a couple of fast flicks, but those won't take too long. Um, but anything new happening with you other than watching Black Panther?
You know what I did? I didn't read any comic books, but it's been so long because I'm still very well behind. I kind of treated myself to watching this long video on YouTube from the guy I usually watch comic book stuff on, covering the Avengers versus X-Men versus Eternals comic that came out like a year or so ago.
Hmm.
Um, Me not wanting to keep up with it as it when it came out because I thought I was going to at least buy it or read it, or actually it was kind of still feeling the burnout from all the event fatigue, but um I thought I'd check it out just to see what happened, just because I had no idea. I completely blocked it out, and holy crap, dude, they went pretty crazy in that story. It was like outstanding, just from the coverage that the guy had. I may read it one day, but in general, there was a lot of crazy stuff that happened in that story. At the same time, it's still one of those stories where all this crazy stuff and everything's changed, and so many characters die and yada yada yada, and then it all gets reset and technically nothing really happened. Like there was very little random ramifications. It's one of those. So and it needed to be, considering as many characters that did die and all the stuff that happened.
Hmm.
There would basically be no characters left in Marvel if they just let it sit the way it was. But it was still pretty crazy for them to go as hard as they did. I wasn't expecting that. I thought it was just going to be another kind of cash grab sort of event. And technically, I guess, like I said, it reset to everything the way it was before. So yeah, it kind of is still that, but at the end of the day, it was still pretty entertaining.
Cool. Yeah, nothing. I haven't read any comics in a while. I mean, I was brushing up on like random stuff, reading about uh, Namar, stuff like that, but nothing too in depth. Just read a couple of random ones. Obviously, he's one of like the original three. Uh, we'll get into that eventually, but he's obviously one of the original three Marvel uh, original like guys, like with the storyline and everything. Like I think he's like him, Captain America, and like the original Human Torch. That was like the android robot one, not the Johnny Storm one.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, just doing stuff like that for the most part, but nothing too crazy or different for me either. Outside of this those little things. But yeah, let's get into our show. I know we want to get into Black Panther and we want to have a nice dialogue and conversation about that. So let's get these fast flicks out of the way really quick. All right, so first fast flick. I keep getting tongue tied there with the L. This is the second week I've done that. But the first fast flick is Dave uh, James Gunn. I don't know, kind of David Gunn. I don't know why. James Gunn posted a picture on Twitter teasing that this character will be appearing in the DCEU universe. That is Mr. Terrific, is the character's name. Um, he's supposed to be like the smartest man in the world in the DC universe. He doesn't. So his his character doesn't have like so the person is Michael Holt is the person like that's dressed like that. He doesn't have any like superpowers, but he uses these like spheres that like they're like technology that he's invented, and that essentially he uses to be a superhero essentially. And obviously, again, he's the smartest man in the DC universe, and um, oh, sorry, not the smartest. I think he's in the top three. I think he might not be the smartest. He's in the top three smartest people in the world. So he uses like his obviously his brains and the tech that he invented and um, ability to do all these things to fight crime essentially. Um, yeah. What are your thoughts on that? I know uh, obviously he's not like a super well known character outside if you're like a comic book fan. I would imagine you'd probably never really heard of him. He was actually funny thing. He was on the Arrowverse. They had him on the Arrowverse. I don't know if you remember that or knew that.
No, I never watched Arrow, so I'm not, or
Yeah.
any of the Arrowverse stuff. But in general, I think that's what's interesting about them, or James Gunn in particular, making this tweet. Again, it was just the picture. There were no words. It's not really saying anything definitive, but it does imply that they're going to be working on something, most likely, cinematic movie with Mr. Terrific at the forefront of it. And I think that's really awesome because he is, like you said, a very not I mean, he's like a deep cut character for what it's worth within DC. Like when you think the DC, you think Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and then Flash and a couple others. He is not an immediate character that you would think of. But and personally, I don't really read DC, so I don't know a ton about him. I've only really known about him more recently when I watched the Injustice movie, the animated movie on HBO Max maybe a month or so ago, which we were talking and discussing whether or not uh, we should talk about those animated DC movies on a future podcast here. So we'll
Hmm.
consider that at some point. 'Cause I still have to get caught up on those, but yeah, in that movie, he did exactly what you're saying. He's very incredibly intelligent and um, had the technology to they were in prison and they bust out of this underwater prison using his technology, and they also use his technology for some other stuff that won't spoil Injustice movie for you. But yeah, he's incredibly smart, and I look forward to seeing what they do with this character because again, he's a very deep cut. um I don't know how many, like, if he's going to be on a team, if it's just like a solo sort of thing, but it'd be interesting to see what James Gunn is planning on doing with this character because I think he, for the little bit I know, I say, yeah, he's pretty cool. But I mean, I don't expect him to be punching Superman or Black Adam or anything like that.
No.
So, how interesting can they make him? What's the sell basically, other than him looking cool? What
Right.
is the reason that I want to go see this movie? So we'll see.
Right. It kind of makes me think of like how they Peacemaker, like a character no one really heard of. Um, and obviously they fleshed it out, and James Gunn was able to essentially turn that character into this like really popular enough character on in the cinema world that they were able to make a show, right? So, it's interesting. That's like kind of how MCU is done, where they've taken a lot of smaller characters that not a lot of people heard of, and for the most part, like they've done pretty well. Like making like movies and or shows or whatever centered around these characters. So it makes sense to do that with the DCEU as well. Like obviously you have your big hitters there, but if you really want to flesh out and create a nice little universe, it makes sense to bring in other characters like this as well. And yeah, it'll be interesting. Like I said, It's just a teaser for now. Obviously, probably not anywhere near ready to like even like think of casting or anything. Who the hell knows? Um, but yeah, it should be interesting for sure. Any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, good to go.
All right, so final fast flick we have. Now it's just reported by someone that's generally been pretty good with having industry insider, but they said that Marvel Born Again will reportedly be rated TVMA when it hits Disney Plus in 2024. So somebody on Twitter, like a fan or whatever, asked, "Is Daredevil going to be TVMA?" And that insider, they asked the insider that's generally very knowledgeable and has a lot of info on a lot of these things. Daniel Richmond, uh, and he essentially replied one word saying likely. Um, and obviously, people remember the former series on Netflix. It was like gritty, a lot more realistic depiction, violence, the physical, the emotional, how emotional the show was. Um, so people are kind of excited that it could potentially be, or fans in general, are excited that it could potentially be back to that sense and that sense. I don't know how much it'll be exactly in that realm, because obviously the TVMA it could be pretty broad. Like, have you ever seen? I know I've talked about this show before, but have you ever seen any episode of Supernatural? Like even like
No,
a scene, just a glimpse of a scene or anything, nothing like that. Okay, so that's technically TVMA because it's like a violent show, right? It's not. It's generally for a more mature audience. So I could see them doing something like that, maybe like not as like bloody and um, completely like graphic, maybe. But yeah, I could probably see something like that. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Like, especially with how he was and obviously in She Hulk, it was more of a lighter toned show. So obviously, when you do characters that are generally more darker, go on a lighter tone show, they're not going to be dark there. They're going to be fitting to the TV series or with the show that they're on. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this potential news?
well, it could be. I mean, if you look at Moon Knight, how they approached that, and even Werewolf by Night, I would definitely say that those were like skirting the line of mature and PG-13 or whatever, you know,
Yeah, I think the
whatever it
official
is,
rating for Moon Knight was TV
teen or
14
something.
or something of
Yeah,
16, I think. TV 16.
something like that. So those were
Yeah, yeah.
definitely skirting the line because, like I said, and when we talked about them with Werewolf by Night, it had blood and killing, and people were getting
Hmm.
burnt up, but it was in black and white, so it doesn't look nearly as violent or as gruesome. And then with Moon Knight, they had those cutaway scenes, so there was implied violence. Him going back and forth between personalities and stuff. So it wasn't as quite as visually violent as something like the Daredevil series had been and Punisher. Um, so I think just if there was a meter and this is where Moon Knight is and the Werewolf by Night here, and maybe Daredevil goes a little here, and then here's Netflix Daredevil over here. So they could be somewhere in between there. I don't think they're going to go all the way and do that with Daredevil and be like Netflix Daredevil, be like Netflix Jessica Jones and so on. But it'll definitely be, at least from what it sounds like, it'll be closer to that, and not so much like an Avengers movie or Spider-Man or something like that. So we'll see.
Yeah, like I said, it would be very interesting if they went completely like that route, the Netflix route, because it'd be so different. But we'll find out. Like obviously as you mentioned, they've gotten a little darker in Phase 4. So I don't know if that's like a slow build up to what's
Mhm.
coming, or if it's just kind of a, well, this is how we're gonna go, like the darkest will go, and then anything coming that's supposed to be dark. Obviously, not counting Deadpool because Deadpool is supposed to be pretty on theme with the first two movies, but they're kind of doing that slow build up of how like graphic and violent and things that they'll go, or like I said, or they're just kind of portraying that this is what we're gonna do, how violent we'll get for the most part. So yeah, it'll be interesting. And like ideally, I like I said, as and again with Supernatural, as a fan of that show, like how that was portrayed like a TVMA. If it's something like that, I think it could work out really well. Like there's some blood, but not a lot. Like and there's some
Mhm.
like this violence and stuff in there, but it does it enough where you can at least it's still a network TV show, so it's like it's not like they get to a point where it's like like we can't even air this on regular. It's like it was on CW, for example. So um, obviously, you just had the warning of that. Beware when you watch it. This is for a little more mature audiences. But yeah, I think they could definitely pull that off. But any other final thoughts as we get into our main feature?
That'll be it.
All right, so we have Black Panther. So Carl and I did go see that. We're probably going to be giving away spoilers. So if you haven't watched Black Panther yet, which will be surprising because apparently a lot of people already have, because like the box offices are going nuts, setting records already. I think this is supposedly like I think they're projecting this to be like top like one of the top five ever grossing films or something like that. I don't know. That's what I was reading. Like they were projecting that much of it to be successful or something. But yeah, it's been out, so we're going to talk about that. And before we get into our thoughts on Black Panther, we do have the official trailer just to kind of get us started and a feel for the movie discussion.
This trailer is not the official trailer. Actually, this is just
Oh, it's just
this
not.
is this is because I just like to see things different. Show show something that we haven't shown
Oh,
already.
okay.
But this is just a short little trailer. Just a fun little one. It's kind of like a TV
Oh,
spot,
okay.
but
Fair
we'll
enough.
just go ahead and get going there.
I need to know if Wakanda is an ally or an enemy.
You can come and find out. That time is the winner of time. From the to the day that I die.
Black Panther Wakanda Forever, rated PG-13.
All right, so that is the little short that Carl found. Yeah, let's let's get into our conversation about the movie. I'll let you lead off. What were your thoughts on the movie as far as everything was concerned?
All right. So, as we discussed, there will be spoilers in this discussion, but we're probably not going to get to those right away. In general, I thought this movie was a really great movie, and it was tasteful. It was like the first thing that came to mind when watching it because of again, all of the situation which most of us are well aware of, like with Chadwick Boseman's passing, and that basically the character of T'Challa not being recast, not being in this movie technically. Um, it was, like I said, it was very tasteful. Like Ryan Coogler, the director, the writer of the movie as well. He knows what situation this is. He's not tone deaf, and
Mm-hmm.
he's front lines. He's there. He not only he knows Chadwick. I'm sure he's close enough to say he was a friend of Chadwick, and everyone else there between Lupita and Angela Bassett and Letitia and everyone involved, like everyone was very close. It was very close in that uh, group there. So they lost a friend, and I felt like this approach with the writing and the direction of the movie, the direction of all the different characters involved. Like I said, it was very tasteful. It could have done a whole lot of things and gone a whole bunch of different directions. And I felt that it had so much going for it, with both respects to T'Challa, respects to Chadwick, and as well as developing characters like Shuri, developing Okoye, developing Namor, and introducing that aspect without it being super disrespectful, or like I said, tone deaf. It wasn't that, and I felt like especially the beginning, because it felt like, at least to me, because 99% of the people in the world did not get an opportunity to go to Chadwick Boseman's funeral, and it felt
Right.
like, beginning of the movie, we have, we see Chadwick Boseman, but technically it's T'Challa, but it's still like it's Chadwick, and we're here to mourn the loss of a great actor. We're mourning within the universe. They're mourning the loss of this character, their friends, their family, and things like that. And we get an opportunity to kind of like collectively grieve. We already did technically when he actually passed, but now we can do this for T'Challa, and now we can come together and do it together for T'Challa as well as Chadwick. And this it was just our opportunity to do that, and then they did it again so tastefully, with the way they handle funerals within Wakanda. It wasn't a mourning, like they do mourn, they do get sad, they are losing friends and family, but clearly it was more of a celebration of life, given the white as opposed to black, all of the dancing and the singing and so on. Like, we're going to celebrate everything and all of their accomplishments, to celebrate their life, and then we all get to sit in our seats and watch and even partake if you really wanted to, and remember, reminisce, and think about all the good things. Think about everything that T'Challa did, everything that Chadwick did. So yeah, like I said, I felt it was very tasteful in that regard, and very important sting, because even we need to move on, like Ramonda did, um, burning the clothing, the white cloth that they had, which a year later, she didn't even do it right away. She waited a year to burn it, and to so she can move on. But Shuri did not do that. So um, well, that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, like I said, collectively, just being able to do that as a fan base, um, and to do it where like it's okay, feel the way you feel, um, mourn the way you want to, but we are going to, praise our brother T'Challa, our brother Chadwick, and so on. So yeah, I was really very, very happy with how they opened up the movie, despite it being a very sad subject. As far as the rest of the movie goes, so yeah, I think it was really, really good. Like, it was really handled very well. I enjoyed a lot of Namor, of the Wakan. In general, I enjoyed the rest of um, all of the supporting characters, Namora and Natuma. I enjoyed them a lot. I enjoyed the back and forth between Okoye and Atuma. I enjoyed the even Riri Williams, who was a character that I was definitely had low expectations on, just because of comic book version is not really not a lot of people's cup of tea, let's just say. And for me, like, I'm not super crazy about Riri. I just kind of like the imagery that she brings to the comic books, but I don't necessarily care for the character. She's not bad, she's not good, she's just kind of there. But in this movie, you can kind of say the same thing. I can totally see someone feeling that way, that she was just an insert, or she's not introduced in Black Panther comic books, and she's an Iron Man. Why is she here? Like, if that's how you feel, whatever. But um obviously there's no more Iron Man, so where else would you put her in? And I think this is a good spot with respect to the original source material. And yeah, we'll get into that later on. But in general, I enjoyed the character enough, and it was also just fun because she speaks like American, like everyone else is speaking with a Wakandan accent, so on. So when she talks, it was like, oh wait, well, wasn't ready for that, sort of thing. Uh, but yeah, there's so much good that goes on in here, and yeah, I really enjoyed the movie. I still, it's a little early for me to say like, do I like it more than the original? Um, I'm not there yet. The original Black Panther is my favorite movie of all time. I don't know if I'm there to say that this one's better or it is I like it more, and I'm not even saying that the original Black Panther is the best movie. It's just my favorite one. Just to clear that up, just for it's not the best MCU movie at all, but it's just my favorite MCU movie. And then this movie is, I don't know how I feel about that. It's just been a little too early. I'm not ready to give it that kind of ranking, but I'll let you go ahead and share your thoughts, Salim.
Yeah, like I was excited about seeing this, and I think my excitement level was a little higher than yours. I think you were just kind of like weren't sure about what to expect, but um, I was pretty excited, and I was excited mostly because of Namor. But I like you. I thought this movie was handled really well. It's super long, but when you look at it, it's like they couldn't really cut anything out because like they had to show respect to Chadwick Boseman. They had to, incorporate. And I did like the fact, again, spoiler, that they incorporated like his real life situation, his passing, the way he passed,
Mhm.
into the movie. Like they didn't just create a different reason that he passed away. They actually used what happened to Chadwick in real life. Obviously, they didn't say. I don't think they actually said cancer. I can't remember, but they
No.
did say like a disease that affected him, um, and that slowly that he was. And then they mentioned in particular that he was fighting in silence,
Hmm.
um, that he did not want anyone to know about. And excuse me, and the grief that they kind of show, like Shuri shows when she's like, I couldn't help him. Like I feel like, and there's people that felt that same way, right? I couldn't help him, to have that situation. So like that was really like fitting, and it was like kind of seeing that you get emotional, watching that type of stuff happening. Um, to your point about Shuri, I know you and I had like concerns about Shuri eventually taking over as Black Panther, and they're like, we really don't know a lot about her. She's just been kind of like a side character, introduced as like a kind of a like T'Challa's geeky little sister. Not really any, you know, like substance to her more than that. This movie does a great job of adding a lot of like substance to her, like a lot of fleshing out a character more, giving her more or personality in a sense. Obviously, her whole thing is she's she is very science first, and she doesn't fall into like the traditions of what's happening in Wakanda and the things that happen, and the spiritual side of um, the ancestors and all that stuff. She's not a believer in that stuff. So that's really a big part of her as a character, and the importance of the build up to her becoming eventually the Black Panther, taking that mantle up. That was important. I loved how much we got more Okoye. Like um, Denai Guerrero is such a great actor, and we needed to see more of her. I thought you got to see her be, more of a character out there in general. Um, obviously, uh, Winston Duke. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him. The way the movie ended, I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later, just to kind of speculate on it, what that could mean for him. Obviously, Tanoke Hirata. I think I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but he played obviously Namar. Um, he absolutely killed it. Like I thought he was like just a really great villain. Like it's funny. Ryan Coogler, like both the villains have probably been the best villains in MCU. I think, right? Killmonger and then um, two at least up there. Like not that's to say they're the one and two best villains in MCU so far, but they're right up there. Like as far as like the ones that really stick out and like the storyline, everything about them. Like they're bad for sure. Like they're more like the things that they do are bad, but you kind of feel as they're not like a black it's not like a black and white thing, right? It's you feel like understand their reasoning, you kind of as why they're the way they are. It's not like I said, it's not just like, oh, you're just a bad guy and there's no reason for you to be this way at all, in that sense. So, and I do want to get more into Namar later as we get into the show, compared him to like the comic book because he's very, very different in here than what he was in the comics. And I think that like as someone that isn't like a big comic book Namar, a fan of Namar in the comics, like I didn't read a lot about him. I just know a little bits and pieces of him from the comics. Um, so I can't really say like if like I think it was great like what we saw on screen, but I can't really say like if they improved on it or if it they would have been better to do like the other route. I don't know. I can't really say on that. But I think personally, just based off of the way this character was in the movie and the actor, how he portrayed it, I think he absolutely like owned the role, and he was probably one of the most memorable things about the movie. Um, so yeah, I like that. I really enjoyed it. I can't. I'm still like so. I think I want to say this is probably my second best favorite movie in the Phase Four. I would still have No Way Home, and maybe that's just my bias more so, just because again I'm a huge Spidey guy. So I'm probably leaning towards No Way Home, just not leaning, but like just saying No Way Home is my favorite still. Um, I would say probably this is my second favorite, and then uh, Multiverse of Madness being my third. But yeah, this it was good, and like looking at the summation of Phase Four, it's like a lot of grief. Like every like set like move from WandaVision to obviously No Way Home, um, to various other parts of Phase Four. There's been people like really dealing with grief and how they overcome their grief and fight through that. And, you know, so that's been a big. I feel like a big part of Phase Four, uh, how to manage and come to terms with the grief part. But yeah, like I said, overall, I really enjoyed the movie, and I like there's people that said it was predictable. Like there's certain parts certainly are predictable, but like I still think it was set up really well. Like there's other parts that are not predictable, like we'll talk about, I'm sure, as we get into more of this discussion. But yeah, but I felt like overall, like I said, like that I didn't think like that so called predictability was a problem for me. Like you could go through any movie really and be like, oh, that was predictable. Well, of course that was going to happen. Or whatever. You could always critique anything in that realm. I feel like, but to me, like I just thought this was really well done overall, and I think the general reviews for this movie are fitting. Um, both over the overall reviews that we're seeing, I feel like they're well done, and I think they're fitting to what the movie ended up being. Um, do you want to get more into specifics now about certain parts of the movie?
Yeah, sure. So in general, I do want to talk a little bit more about, like I said, we can talk Okoye right now. I think that's okay to start off with.
Okay.
Like I said, I really enjoyed her development in this movie, and particularly her kind of duel with Atuma, going back and forth. Like she took out three of the Talokan by herself, and then Atuma and her go at it. And I love that. Like in particular with Atuma in general, I love that he wasn't some dishonorable. Like he wasn't a villain. Like he's not in the comic books. He's like, not a huge villain, but he's just a villain, right?
Hmm.
But here he was actually an honorable warrior because he's
Right.
got, like, he had a Okoye on the ropes. Her weapon was out of her hand, and he waited for her to get up, and then he kicked over her spear so she can pick it up herself because he really wanted to fight her fairly and fight her because he enjoyed the fight that much. Like it's like
Right.
he hadn't been challenged in so long, and here I am. Here's this true warrior fighting me. I can best her, but I'm not going to stab her in the back. I'm not going to break her weapon. I'm not going to use her weapon on her. I'm not going to while she has her back turned, I'm not going to throw dirt in her face. I'm going to fight her fairly, and I'm going to beat her because
Hmm.
she deserves my respect, sort of thing. And I enjoyed that a ton, even though the character himself didn't do so much. That was pretty much like the defining thing he did in this movie was the back and forth with Okoye. But it also just develops Okoye too, because it again proves she's number one, Dora Milaje for a reason. She is their best fighter.
Hmm.
She is, very smart and very capable on the battlefield. She knows what she's doing out there, but also like the development of, yeah, you are also you disobey orders from Ramonda. She said don't bring Shuri. She brought Shuri. You lost Shuri then. You were there, and for all of these failures, especially going back to the first movie where T'Challa and Killmonger go at it and he loses, but you didn't defend T'Challa. You didn't go with Ramonda and T'Challa when they went to the Jabari tribe. You didn't. You stayed in the capital. You stayed in Wakanda, and you served Killmonger. He was the enemy. He was the outsider. You kind of betrayed the queen and betrayed T'Challa, the king, by staying in Wakanda. Like you kind of was tallying as much as good as she was doing. She was also tallying up this list with Ramonda of like, you're on my hit list right now, and then she gets fired, and that came out of nowhere. That's not predictable. That's one of the things where you're saying predictable. That's one of those things that was not predictable for
Right.
me. I was like, whoa, she got fired. That's some character development. Can't wait to see what happens now.
Right.
Because yeah, that's kind of a big deal. She was number one Dora Milaje. She called all the shots, and she just got fired. So I was super into that part of her story. And yeah, she does redeem herself a little bit in the end, but technically, with, again, spoilers, with Ramonda passing away, and then Shuri taking up throne, who's, I guess, technically the queen as well. Um, does that mean she's reinstated? Does it not matter? Was like, because there wasn't really like a period where, or at least not shown on camera, where Ramonda named a replacement for Okoye. So maybe there was one, maybe there wasn't yet, because
I think
she.
it's hinted that Anika is because she's wearing the stuff that there was like a gold or something that Okoye wears
Mhm.
that gets transferred to the leader after if she's not the leader. So I think there's something that she was wearing that you saw. So now she's now the leader of the Dora Milaje, I think. Uh, I believe
Yeah.
that's what the setting it up as.
Yeah, either way, it's up to Shuri now to make that decision. So whether or not uh, Koye will get that role back or just sits back because not she wasn't even in the Dora Milaje at all when she got fired. So like, she was just completely ousted. So she still very much wants to serve Wakanda, but we'll see how that develops. And yeah, that's just another thing. Any else you want to put on Okoye?
No, yeah, like that part. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Was not predictable. Seeing like um her basically begging for an opportunity to do to redeem herself and um kind of getting shut down and saying no, you're done. Like I want you essentially, and that obviously the emphasis of her throwing the spear down in that manner was to show that she was giving up her title. Um, and that part, they kind of explain like so they talk mention past not as passing, but like it's relevant enough for them to mention the absence of um Wakabi. That's her husband, obviously from the first movie. He's he's the one, Daniel Kaluuya, played by Daniel Kaluuya, who takes Killmonger's side, and obviously one of the elders mentions like she took a sword again, or she took a spear again up to her own husband. We owe her that much, and obviously then Ramonda, Angela Bassett's character is like, no, she explaining the things that she did wrong and how she's lost everything, so she doesn't get um, that one excuse or whatever. But they kind of show like he's in prison now, I guess. So that's this explained his absence in the movie. I would say originally, like I don't know if that was just written in um, because Daniel Kaluuya was filming Nope during this time, so just he couldn't fit Wakanda Forever into his schedule. So that's like the original reason, the real reason he's not in this movie. But I don't know if they just kind of wrote that in to make it work in a sense. So, but that was that scene is probably like one of the best scenes in the movie as a whole. Like that whole when they're in the uh, what's that place called? Like the throne place, whatever the room that is.
Sure.
Um, that's probably one of the best scenes in general for Okoye, and you really see the emotion behind her character there.
Yeah, and like you were saying with Ramonda's like speech or whatever, she was basically saying Okoye can go see her husband anytime she wants to, but that's when she then said, "I lost my entire family." That
Hmm.
because at that point,
She didn't know
Shuri
who
was
he
she
was.
didn't know
Yeah,
Shuri volunteered to go to Tolokan, but
right.
Shuri was gone, and then T'Challa and T'Chaka have passed, so she didn't have anyone around. So that's where that line came from. But speaking of Ramonda, yeah, like
So that's
I
another
thought she
character that they really fleshed out, because in the first one she's just kind of like she's just a mother figure, and that not really any. She just has maybe one or two lines, and she's just like not much there. But yeah, this movie really fleshed her out.
yeah, I enjoyed her a ton, and I thought she looked amazing. She had a lot of great looks. She was ripped. Like she's very like I mean Angela Bassett's always been pretty fit, but just seeing all of that muscle on her shoulders and arms and stuff like that, I was like Ramonda, she's no slouch, right? but I mean, technically, it's just Angela Bassett, but still, like
Yeah.
she 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 always looks like that, but it just makes her look more powerful. It looks like she could have been a Black Panther at some point, but just her performance in general was excellent. She did a great job. Like I felt her presence, especially at this beginning part of the movie when she's in front of these world leaders, and was like, yeah, she's handling her business. Like she's not
Hmm.
just some weeping queen. She's not she's lost her husband and her son, but she is literally handling business. She's running Wakanda and doing what Wakanda needs, and seeing, like, again, the beginning of the movie with the whole infiltration part with all of those, I don't know, Navy SEALs or whatever, thinking that they can get in.
I think they were
Uh,
French something or another, like because they were whatever French specialist or whatever.
yeah, whatever the military units,
Hmm.
but just that was just a fun scene. Again, great stuff for Rwanda, and yeah, like
It
again,
was
Angela
basically
Bassett killed it.
yeah, it was basically her fuck around and find out moment.
Basically,
Like
yeah, for the most part.
yeah,
Uh,
she basically told the UN fuck around and find out. So that was yeah, that was really good for sure.
yeah,
Um,
I wasn't expecting. I mean, I suppose I can, that was relatively expected that they were going to offer in this movie as well. Um, but that was something, I guess, in, like, I don't know about you when you went to go see it, but when I saw it, there was an audible, like, sigh and crying, out kind of outrage a little bit when she passed away, because they kind of did a couple of fakes like that throughout the movie, where at least for me, in my perspective, where it seemed like, oh, they're gonna kill Ramonda in this scene. Oh, she's gonna die in this scene. Oh, okay, no, it's not gonna happen. Oh, they're gonna kill off Mbaku in this scene. Oh wait, no, he didn't die. Well, he's gonna die here. Oh wait, no, he didn't die. And they kind of, if it felt like again when Namor punched Mbaku, I thought he punched a hole in his chest. I thought he
yeah,
was gonna die. I thought there was quite a few scenes like that. So when Ramonda actually died, people really was weeping and upset, a little sad, and especially because they had the coffin and all that stuff engraved with her image on there too. So it was just like extra sad. But yeah, that one was somewhat expected. I can see them, you know, kind of putting a finality to, like, this T'Challa story, like the whole family, as well as building up Shuri. Like she doesn't have the liberty to be a little kid anymore. She can't have, her mother, her brother, her father are all gone, and all through tragedy, and she needs to step up and be more mature and take on these responsibilities of being, the leader of Wakanda, as well as the Black Panther, and just figuring out and navigating this situation with Namor. No one else is going to do it. It's in your hands now. So if Ramonda had lived, then it would have been Ramonda's responsibility. It would have been her to get rid of Namor. It would have been her that had to, figure something out. But this allowed Shuri to say, okay, I have to get this heart shaper. I have to figure this out. We have to get the Black Panther back. I have to protect Wakanda because no one else is. So it was important that she passed away as well, even though, regardless how sad it was.
right, for sure. Like still, honestly, I was a little surprised when she passed away. I was like, oh wow, they actually like they're going all in. They're not, they're the loss in this movie is not just. I mean, I was just sure they show she's still not over her brother's passing a year. I mean, not that you ever get over family passing away, but like she hasn't even like really um like she talks about how when she thinks about her brother's passing, she wants to burn the world down, right? So she hasn't even really sat down to like grasp that her brother's passed away. She kind of just like always ignores that those thoughts in her head. Like she just doesn't want to think about it. So to have her mom die while she's still not even like forget like grieving about her brother. She's not even she hasn't even grieved her brother's loss. She's just kind of like avoiding the grieving process for her brother's loss. And then obviously her mom passes away. So that's major to me. Um, and that was kind of surprising in that sense, in my opinion. But yeah, I thought Angela Bassett again, like the character, we didn't know a lot about her, and from the first movie. Um, and this movie, obviously, you see more of her, um, like her, um, how do I say it? Of her more like how strong she is, like how like she is the queen of Wakanda, and she decides to she's not afraid to do what's necessary and so forth. So yeah, it was really well done there. Did you want to get into Namor now, or
Yeah, whatever we want to discuss.
yeah? So I wanted to get into Namor. I mean, like I was super excited about his character, just like not from the comic, because the comic, like I said, I didn't know a lot about. And obviously he's one of the original like of the golden age Marvel comic book characters. I guess as I mentioned early in the show, he was he's a classic anti-hero and a staple of the Marvel comics that was like created back in 1939. Um, and he was like amongst like Captain original as one of the original creations, like along with like Captain America and the original Human Torch. So he's an old character, and what he is in the comics and what they did with the MCU is a lot different. Like we've already talked about that to ad nauseum. Obviously, bunch of different things I wanted to mention about the differences. Um, so obviously he's in the MCU. So in the comics, he's like his features. I don't know if he has a like technically a race. Technically, obviously he's Atlantean, and I would say his features are probably more like elf-like. Not to say they're not elf-like here, because he does have the elf ears, but in general, like when you think of like elves in the mystic realm or in a mystic sense, in a sense, they kind of have those like with the eyes the way they are, like more like an almond shaped, if you will. Um, like I think he has like I said, more elf like features in the comics, but obviously in here, he's a person of color, and they go with the Mayan Mesoamerican descent, essentially, that they go with. And yeah, I thought, like I said, that was really cool. I love the change up of that sense. I thought that was pretty cool of the Mayan background and changing and things like that. And he wears like he's a lot more. Um, he stands out more in here in general. Like his outfit is like he's a lot more. He wears a lot more like bling, if you will. For the most part in the comics, he wears a basically a scaly green swim trunks. He's not really like wearing a bunch of things. I think the two things that are similar in the comic and here is that his ears are pointy, and they also have the wings on the legs or on the feet. Sorry, I should say. Like I think those are like the only two things that were similar. Um, or obviously, then he obviously he's the king or whatever of prince of the the city in the sea. Obviously, in the comics, it's Atlantis, but in Wakanda Forever, it's Tolokan. So yeah, that's one difference. Like his feet, the way he's presented, he's just wearing a lot more. And obviously, the second one I just mentioned, another one that I mentioned, the Atlantis versus the Telecon, that's different. And I'm imagining one of the reasons that they did the change up is because of Aquaman. They didn't want to just do what DC already did and just do like, hey, we already did this Atlantis, and so now people are going to think we're copying you guys. So let's change it up. Let's do something else. And I know there's a lot of call for diversity in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it was a good opportunity for them to make this character more diverse than what he's depicted in the comics, and in general to add more diversity into the MCU as well. So like you see that it's more towards the Mayan Aztec mythology. He's I think so, like, yeah, in that sense you see those changes there. I think he's more like community minded in this movie than he is in the comics.
He's what?
More community minded in the sense like of his of Telecon, as
Okay.
opposed to like for him it's about like preserving his city and his people and keeping them away from the humans, whereas in the comics, like, obviously he wants to, he hates the surface world just the way he does in the movies, but he's always trying to go in and wage war against the surface world. Like in here, he's like, no, we don't want to be part of that. We wanted to keep ourselves a secret from them because we don't want them coming here.
Well, he was like that at the beginning of the movie, but at the end of the movie, he was very much wanting to wage war on the surface.
Well, yeah, he wanted to, but it was more so like, yeah, I mean, he kind of wanted he wants to get that eventually to a point, but he still doesn't want anyone to know yet that Telecon is there. Like, he still wants that secret there until he's ready to, attack or whatever, if you will. But that,
like for the most part, he ended with like Shuri showing him mercy, but and this is one of the things I actually was enjoying about Namora is that she was challenging Namor because he was like, why aren't we attacking? Like, why aren't we, going back and fighting anymore? Why are you being friendly with Wakanda? And he's like, yeah, like she showed me mercy. So I kind of, basically I kind of owe her one. But at the same time, she's at a point where everyone wants vibranium. Everybody thinks that Wakanda's weak. You don't have a king. You don't have a queen. And people are going to attack, and you're not friends or allies with anyone else. And either they're going to attack Wakanda and you're going to have to fight it all by yourself, or eventually you're going to come and ask for our help because we have vibranium and we can help you. And we are, when the world comes to attack Wakanda, Talokan will also, we either will sit there and watch Wakanda burn, or you're going to ask for our help and we'll fight the world with you.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's fair. The another difference here is they add the mutant inception into the storyline. In the comics, he is like born half human. So like his mom is of Atlantean descent. She's like the queen of Atlantis, and the ruler of Atlantis. So she is a different species. And his father is a sea captain, and from America, and he's half human, half Atlantean or mermanian or whatever you want to call it. Or
Atlantean.
Sure Atlantean. But there's something they call something murder people or whatever. There's something like that he's supposed to be half of. So that mutant thing is something that they're adding in, and obviously they're gonna, I guess, um, put him in as a mutant in the MCU. And but obviously in MCU he gets his powers from the plant, the same plant that the Panthers get their power from. That because his mom, they show him his mother taking the drink, and because of that, he comes out, mutated. It changes him. But for some reason, he's like the only person that can really breathe on land. He's not succumbed to only having to be underwater, because you see like the other characters like
Oops.
Atuma, they have like that, and Namora, they have that little water thing to help them breathe, the apparatus. They can't breathe without that thing on land, so they have that little thing on their face. But he doesn't have to. Now he does need water eventually. Like they kind of figure out, like they kind of show like in the movie that like they try to understand his physiology, and they find out like his skin can breathe, breathe underwater somehow. Like he doesn't have gills, but like his skin somehow is able to do that. So yeah, that's one thing. Another thing in the comics, he's, we talked about the Illuminati from the Multiverse of Madness. Obviously, he in the comics, he's actually one of the members of the Illuminati. And I think there was a rumor that that one of the empty seats it's just kind of like an Easter egg that's supposed to be his of that universe. Eight, what was that? 818.
I think
universe?
so.
I can't remember, but that's like a Easter egg thing. Like that's supposed to be of his one of his multi-universe selves, Namor's. It's supposed to be the Illuminati there. So, but yeah, in the comics, he's in the Illuminati. And they also, I think, so obviously they haven't really gotten into it, and maybe they will more so. But I do think reading about it, the Namor and Namor and the comics has more powers, more abilities. Like he has like more enhanced strength, ambitious adaptation. He's telepathic to communication, sea life. He has all those powers, and they show that in MCU. But he also has the ability in the comics to be able to kind of wield like the animals to his will, and be able to control them more so. I think there's there's stuff where he can like take electric eels and wield them at their electric power, and stuff like that. So maybe they'll get into that more so eventually when they show the character again. But yeah, I mean, I think the vibranium thing is also different. They don't really have. There's like a precious metal I think they talk about for Atlantis, but it's not vibranium. But obviously MCU is very vibranium focused as a whole universe, so it makes sense to have a vibranium included in here. But yeah, overall, really great the character. The other one, obviously, the nickname is more godly. They have him being more of a depicted more as a god in here than just being a prince, because obviously what they end up calling him is what Kakulakan. It's the winged serpent god. So that's what his people see him as, more of a god. And obviously M'Baku kind of mentions that, like, if we kill him, this isn't going to be good. This is going to be like we're killing their god, and if we kill their god, there's going to be endless war with this, with this very powerful race of people that that we don't know how to beat. So like they kind of mentioned that. But yeah, like I said, I just thought I thought the actor did a great job with it. I thought the changes, even though I don't know a lot in depth in the comics, I do feel like this was like they did really well. And like I just think he's one of the most like he's probably one of the most badass characters in MCU right now. But he's up there like as a like in when you consider all the characters that they've introduced. He's really cool in my opinion. What are your more thoughts, fleshed out thoughts on Namor?
One I really going back to his name. I liked, although it didn't necessarily make sense. They just kind of uh, just threw it in there for what to explain why they call him Namor. But just like the Spanish person just saying that you are a child without love, like okay, yeah, amor means love in Spanish, and the end would be no, so no love, and he's a child without love, Namor. So that's what that means. And I was like, oh well, okay, that works for me. That someone was thinking outside of the box because that's definitely not why they call him Namor from the
No,
comics. I don't know why they call him Namor the Submariner. Like I'd have to actually look that up. But
yeah,
I mean, his
and
name
he's
is
not.
just
Yeah,
Namor,
yeah, and he's not the Submariner in MCU. He's a
of course. Yeah.
yeah.
But his birth name in the comics is Namor Mackenzie. But in general, like them giving him this lore name, I actually kind of enjoyed that, even though it had no reason to do it.
Mhm.
But going back to it, I believe this would be, although not technically the first MCU mutant, but the first one on screen that
Mhm.
first person on screen to say the word mutant would be Namor, because even in Multiverse of Madness, Professor Xavier was his mutant self, but he never said mutant, the word, and he came from a different universe. Uh, and then after that, MCU would be the first one, Miss Marvel, and being the first mutant in the MCU, being referenced. But Namor is already said that he's basically lived like when it was like the 1400s or the
Yeah,
1500s,
15,
something like that, when
14,
he was born.
1500.
So
Yeah, the
canonically,
Conquistadors when they came and
canonically within the MCU, he's currently the first mutant. We'll see if that sticks
all
a
this
few years from now, if when other characters are
apocalypse.
introduced. Apocalypse or Selene. We'll see how that goes. I doubt they'll even have Selene in the MCU, but we'll see. But yeah, right now he's the first mutant in the MCU. So right now we'll have to figure out, are they going to build from him and go outward that way, and say, yeah, he's, because again, I don't think he has kids, so I wouldn't say that he would have more kids that cause more mutants. So I don't think it's going to be him. I think it's just kind of more of a coincidental. He was the first one that
Mhm.
is technical, but that's why I don't understand why he's saying that word when he's been underwater for several, 100 years. Who's telling him what a mutant is? Like, who's telling him that he is a mutant, right? Like, why does he have this
Mhm.
term in his head and he's using it? So that's kind of the weird thing about that. That being said, I know you've said several times, as we were talking about Eternals, how the mutants can be introduced in the MCU. Remember when I was mentioning earlier, right before we started talking about Black Panther, how I read or watched this video on the Eternals versus the X-Men versus Avengers?
Mhm.
So, your basis on what you think the mutants can do or are going to be introduced may not be the way that you think necessarily is going to happen in MCU, because in the comics, in that comic specifically, they changed the backstory of how Eternals and mutants and deviants work in the comics, in that particular comic. So everything's different now. Uh, so they changed it to where that they said that mutants are were originally came to be because of crossbreeding between deviants and humans. Some basically, there was just some breeding, and the deviant gene got placed into humans, and that deviant gene is the X gene, and that's how mutants came to be within Marvel Comics. That is a brand new thing that they just did in that story in particular. So it's different. They basically retconned mutants in Marvel Comics. Why they do that? Probably because they're gonna introduce mutants that way. Possibly, don't speculation. Mutants that way within the MCU. So we could see Eternal movies and more references to the Eternals and deviants within the MCU, and then have more mutants that way. But again, very interesting that they're considering Namor right now as the first mutant with his Total Khan history. So I found that
Well,
interesting.
it'll be interesting to see how a deviant would breed with the Eternal, because deviants were kind
Humans,
of
not the
well, even then humans as with deviant, because deviants were kind of presented as this animal looking thing. So
right.
we'll
But
find out.
aren't mutants again the one of the things? Are you familiar with Krakoa and what's going on with House of X and X-Men right now?
No, no.
Okay, so really quickly, the mutants all live together. Every mutant, all of them, for what it's worth, like maybe 95% of them live on the island of Krakoa, which is a mutant island, a living island, but
Hmm.
it is only they all live there, and they have gates set up on the island that no human or any, basically no human can pass through these gates. Only mutants can pass through the gates because they have to have the X gene in them. If they try, bonk, they're not going to get in. Deviants in this story, they needed to call extra help because humans or the Eternals, not the what was it, Eternals, the Deviants in Eternals were fighting and killing a bunch of mutants, and they needed to call some extra help, so they called other Deviants that weren't fighting against them, and the Deviants were allowed on the island, which was implying that the X gene is coming from the Deviants. Basically, Deviants are just the ancestors of mutants, is what they're trying to say by allowing them onto the island. They were able to pass through the gates. Now, when you look at deviants, yeah, they look like monsters, but so do mutants. It's not all of them, not Cyclops and not Jean, but certainly Beast and Nightcrawler and Rockslide and any of the other beasts, like the Morlocks and all of those things. They look like that too. So that's where they're kind of just blurring that line. Is like, yeah, they're kind of the same. So that being said, yeah, it's not all deviants don't all look like monsters too. And they also were kind of reiterating that the Eternals and the deviants can live side by side. The Eternals wasn't kind of kill all deviants. The Eternals were killing the deviants that like extra mutated to the point where they were killing other deviants and killing Eternals and killing humans. Like it was those deviants that they were going after. Not every single deviant. It was just the extra mutated ones that were killing everyone. At least again, this is how they were saying in the comics. I'm not talking about the movie. So if that's how they happen to be uh, killing, all these other deviants, but they weren't killing all of the regular looking humans or whatever. So yeah, mutants and deviants, again, very brand new thing, but they are very similar. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see for sure. Like I said, I just my overall premise is that mutants already exist. So
Well, yes, established.
yeah, that like the whole concept was like, how are they going to have mutants appear? Like they weren't there when helping out. Why were they helping out with Thanos? Why are they here? Why are they appear there? I just like whole thing was that the the mutants were always there, and they just were kind of hiding out. And we'll see how they end up doing it originally, like as far as their creation goes. That was just my theories, and obviously MCU does so many variations of what the comics do, so it'll be interesting to see how they incorporate their version. But it obviously, seemingly, it looks like that they are going to do where mutants already exist within the MCU, and we'll find out, I guess, in the end how they come to be for sure.
All right, so let's move on and talk. We haven't talked much about Riri Williams. I can never say names with two
the
R's.
Riri, Rory. I can't say those.
Yeah, it's always a problem. But Riri Williams. So yes, this character. Well, again, hate it or love it. Now, whether it's because you read comic books and you just hate her there, or you are new to it and you're wondering why is this character randomly building an Iron Man suit. I don't know who she is. What's her deal? Yeah, it doesn't really matter how you feel, I guess. But in general, yeah, she legit is just an MIT student. Didn't directly say it. They just had people. Again, they said that she was in Boston, and they had people wearing MIT, merchandise on campus, but they didn't say yes. She is an MIT student. She's incredibly smart. She's doing everyone's homework. She had a little shed on her own stuff, and she's building Iron Man armor.
And
Using tech art.
This scene is a nod to Iron Man 1 where Tony's wearing a similar like half sleeved or no sleeved shirt. I think it was a white shirt in there too. And then he's doing hammering the thing. It's a kind of a nod to Iron Man 1. And she's doing essentially the same thing here. And what looks like a cave where Tony was in a cave as well.
Mm-hmm. And then so this is her first suit for what it's worth. Not a full suit of armor. She didn't have access to vibranium or any sort of she ain't that rich. Not Iron Man rich. But she was able to cobble together something. And like they said, people see her on YouTube, flying around. That's me, just goofing off in my suit that I built in this garage, sort of thing. But she just been low key, is super ridiculously smart and just messing around with Stark Tech and other ideas. And we're going to see her more. But she, again, if you didn't know, she does have a Disney Plus show that is coming out next year. So we will be seeing a whole Disney Plus series on Ironheart, is what their character's name is, superhero names. You can see the heart on her chest, like the arc reactor is shaped as a heart in the heart shape. So that is Ironheart. Yeah, we will see more of her. I didn't care for the design. I don't have a picture of the final design. I don't really care for that design yet. I do hope they change it for the series. I do kind of like this one enough, just like her Mark 1, if you will. But in general, I think she was a good character without the Iron Man suit. Just in general, like I said, I liked hearing her speak because everyone's with a Wakanda accent, and then she's from Chicago, by the way. The character is, so she
talks about the Bulls.
Talking about the Bulls, like I'm surprised no one else in the audience was like, "Oh, she's from Chicago," or the Bulls game. Like that's hype, wherever everyone.
I think she had the Bears, maybe the Bulls aren't as like.
No, she said the right team. If the writers had to pick any team from Chicago, they should have picked the one that has the most championships.
Yeah, but I mean, if you live in Chicago, we know that this is a Bears town. So I mean, we can.
That's true. That's why she picked the right team, because if you also live in Chicago and you root for the Bears, you're in denial. The Bulls,
that's fine.
They have 6 championships and have the greatest player of all time playing on that team, Michael Jordan. Yeah, and the Bears had one Super Bowl.
Sure, but
30 years ago,
sure,
40
I love
years
the
ago.
Bulls. They're my favorite team. They're my favorite team, and I love the NBA. But the reality is, this is a more of a Bears town. People in Chicago care a lot more about the Bears than they do.
Yeah,
the Bulls.
I'm
So
acknowledging
that's
that.
why I'm saying. That's why
I'm acknowledging
the
that.
reaction
I'm
is
saying
there.
Chicago fans are delusional. If you keep rooting for the Bears, then there's nothing to root for. Well, and you could be rooting for the Bulls, and they at least have a good team.
Justin Fields is giving Bears fans something to root for. Finally, the Bears have a quarterback, but we're not a football podcast, so we're not.
I'm trying to plug your show here, your podcast, and you keep talking about the Bears.
I'm fine. That's fine.
Please listen to the podcast of Bulls Gold for Salim and your partner for Bulls coverage.
Yes, listen to our podcast for sure.
But yeah, so in general, yeah, we'll see more of this character. I liked her, and yeah, I liked her more just without the Iron Man or her Ironheart armor. But again, we'll see what they do, because her series is going to be, again, they took her armor away from her. She said, it's really sweet, but we can't let you go back home with that. So she doesn't have it anymore. So she will most likely build another suit of armor somehow. Whether Wakanda hooks her up with some more vibranium, or she does it with steel, or she figures something out. I don't know. We'll see.
Definitely. I wanted to talk about the last scene with the M'Baku. I mean, did you have anything else before we get to that? I don't want to skip around too much.
I mean, are you talking about the post credits? Because that was not M'Baku.
No, not the post credits.
Okay.
One of the final scenes in the movie, when they're doing the ceremony of passing of the mantle or whatever of the throne, and obviously Shuri does not go. She's like, oh, she's doing something else. She has some other things she wants to do. I can't remember if that was in the beginning of the post credit. Well, then maybe that's beginning of the post credit, maybe. But well, I guess we can wait on that. I don't know if you had anything else you want to talk about before that.
Well, I mean, we need to talk about Shuri, so in general, and then that just leads into post credits. But yeah, so Shuri's a Black Panther. We've already said it multiple times. So she took on the mantle. She used a 3D printer to recreate the heart-shaped herb, which was reasonable but unexpected still.
DNA. Well, the DNA she was able to create it. So
no, it's more of that she used a 3D printer, not that she used the DNA from off of the fibers from the gift that Namor gave her to start the process, plus some of the blood from T'Challa.
She had already gotten so far on her own, but she needed more on, and what Namor gave her she was able to finish the rest and get essentially what was a 99.8% match.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it was more of I knew that was gonna happen, right? She had to restore the heart-shaped herb. I wasn't expecting it to be a 3D printer. I was expecting her to have beakers and all this stuff, explosions. Oh, okay, this one will work, and chug, and it'll be like a synthetic, just a formula of that. I wasn't expecting her to just say, yeah, print it, and then here's a heart-shaped herb coming out of a 3D printer, which again,
by
reasonable. The way, you can make food out of 3D printers.
Yeah.
In real life, in real world, people actually do that. I just wasn't expecting that in the movie.
By the way, did you know the voice of that the machine or whatever the Android talking thing? That's Trevor Noah.
Yeah. Okay.
That voice. Yeah,
that's cool.
Because it was Groot, or I think Groot or something like that. I can't remember the name they put. But yeah,
I was wondering why I saw his why he was at the premiere. I saw his pictures on IMDb. I was like, why?
That's Trevor Noah. Trevor Noah did the voice for that.
Maybe we'll hear him again. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she recreates a heart-shaped herb. They give her the formula with Nakia and Riri there. She is supposed to be getting buried, but she doesn't want to go through those traditions. She just strap her down and give her the stuff. She is
Yeah,
supposed to also
her
go to
reasoning.
the
Well,
after. Go ahead. Yeah.
no, I was just saying, not sorry, not meaning to interrupt, but her reasoning is because if they need to revive her, they need to be able to access her chest because she gives those beads.
Mhm.
So that's why she doesn't want to be buried.
Right, right. And then she's supposed to go to the ancestral plane. She does not. She goes to basically like the version of the throne room, but just not exactly the same. And she
Mhm.
doesn't see her father. She doesn't see her brother. She sees Killmonger, which was one of those predictable things, just because it was rumored a long time ago, and people really wanted to see Killmonger come back. But he was still there, and I find that part of the movie also interesting because even though it was a predictable thing, the reasoning behind it and how it
Well, I
motivated
think
her.
the
Uh,
predictability of him coming back, but and not, I don't think it's predictable that's how he would have come back. Like,
right. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, they used this as her. Like, you would think that Killmonger isn't going to be on her side. You would think that
mhm.
uh Killmonger doesn't care about her feelings or anything. He's the villain, he's the bad guy. But what he did was just give her perspective and also say, like, hey, like, you may love your brother and your father, but like, consider this, like, your brother allowed the person that killed your father to get away scot free. Like, who killed that guy? It was me. I did that, you know? Like, because of your brother and stuff, like, I got in there. Like, and I became king of Wakanda. Like, stuff like that. You can't. And then it was that vengeance, the desire for revenge and vengeance that motivated Shuri to go out and do all of the stuff. It wasn't until that M'Baku speech where she and also Ramonda, show them who you are. She was just kind of, that was is what leveled her out. She wanted just vengeance. She wanted to just kill him. She wanted to just fight on the Killmonger side of it. But thinking about what M'Baku said, let's not kill their god. Let's not wage war against Solo Khan. And then Ramonda remind her, like, this is not the type of person that you are. You're not a murderer. You're not this type of person that seeks vengeance.
So she
And
says
so,
that to the show him who you are is what she
right,
also says to T'Challa.
right. So that's what leveled her out, and that's why she let Namor go, and tried to reconcile that situation, even though she could have easily have killed him given that situation. But I thought that was really an important take to see out of that moment there. Um, but yeah, that, like, using Killmonger in that way was what was unexpected, but
Yeah,
very
and you
well
kind of
done.
yeah, and you kind of see her costume is like a mix of her brothers and Killmonger's, because like the gold, like plated, like that's Killmonger, uh, similar in that sense.
Right, and she designed both of those suits, the two suits that were in the first movie.
Hmm.
She designed both of them. It was just
Hmm.
T'Challa didn't like the flashiness of the gold, so he went with something a little low key, having the
Right,
more silverish stuff. But this
I do.
also still has the like the dots on there that
Right,
are like Shuri as well. So it's her own
right.
design too.
But I do think this is symbolism in a sense that, like, that she chooses this specific suit that's where that says similar to Killmonger because that side of her is in her. Um, in that sense, like she's like similar to Killmonger in that sense.
Mhm.
Uh, th- so I think that was kind of like symbolism in certain ways.
And that's where I want to know. the next step for her character. Is
Right.
she going to continue to be, again, because the character that we knew from Black Panther 1, from Infinity War, like that girl is gone. Like
Right.
she has to be Queen of Wakanda. She has to be Black Panther. Again, she may not have all of the technical skills that T'Challa had, or one thing which we did gloss over, and I'm glad they did, because it's one thing that I've hated about T'Challa / Shuri, is that comic book T'Challa is one of the top smartest people in all
Right.
of the world, but in the MCU they didn't really care to mention or use that aspect of his character
Right.
whatsoever. But in this movie, they did allude, or she did say that she been very gifted and smart for a long time since she was young, but
Yeah.
she got that from her
Her
brother,
brother.
is what she
Right.
said. So I'm like, okay, thank you for acknowledging that T'Challa is also really, really smart.
Right. Because he goes to MIT too, right? And if I remember,
I don't remember.
maybe I would. Maybe I'm not. I could be wrong. I thought he does, but yeah.
But yeah, like yeah, I want to know what type of person she's going to be going forward, and how she, because again, we're also coming off of Wakanda, or the first Black Panther, where Wakanda was opening its gates to the world and
Mhm.
trying to have outreach centers and do all of these different things in the world and be more open. Now with all of this stuff has happened, with all of her family's gone, and she's Black Panther now, she has to make this decision. She's filled with a little bit of Killmonger and a little bit of T'Challa, a little bit of Ramonda in there. Like, what type of person is she going to be going forward? Is she going to want to serve on the Avengers? Like, they weren't. That's another thing. There were no cameos in this movie from any other Avengers
Yeah,
characters.
that's kind
However,
of
no, go ahead.
interesting because
Yeah.
no, sorry, I was just gonna say, like, I guess the funeral, like, you would think like people somebody would have showed up for his for like an Avenger or something like that. But that was interesting that that they don't have, even just as a guest, for like just to be there for a scene, just that, oh, we came to show our respect for King T'Challa.
hmm
So that was
But
interesting.
one of the things that we also didn't mention yet, was Everett Ross and the
Mhm.
Valentina character were, apparently they are
Married or divorced.
they're divorced now. So, or they were divorced in this movie, so they at one point were married.
Right.
And we end the movie with Everett Ross getting arrested, but he was also freed at the end. But
By
still,
Okoye, yeah.
but no, I think it was, yeah, it was okay. I'm thinking about
Okoye.
Falcon and Winter Soldier. But yeah, he was freed at the end, but still, there is, now we have another connecting bridge of Valentina / Thunderbolts stuff with now Black Panther, and where are they going to go with that? Because now Everett Ross, he can't just like go back home.
Mhm.
He now is a wanted felon, like escaping prison.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm guessing, is he gonna go
Also,
to Wakanda? Is that such
yeah, he's actually a traitor of America, because
yeah,
he, gave away all this information. So
right.
he can't come back to America unless his name is cleared. So
Right.
there's that. And then what's Valentina going to do with this information? How's that going to affect Thunderbolts? So that'll be a little interesting. It wasn't like there's so much to take from that. It was just the fact that she was in this movie was more interesting, and has that connection to Everett Ross. So we're not done with either of those characters. I wouldn't be surprised if we were done with Everett Ross, but the fact that they tied him to Valentina now is like, oh yeah, we're definitely not done with him. He's coming back for something.
For sure. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. And like I said, like, I'm assuming he's gonna be in Wakanda. Like, I can't. Where else would he go? Like,
hmm
well, she's just coming in and freeing him. And it's like, you just go in the forest.
hmm
We're not like, she can't. She has to take him somewhere. So I'm assuming he's gonna be under the protection of Wakanda. Um, And yeah, it's going to be interesting. The other thing to see, like you mentioned, like we mentioned earlier, with Namor mentioning how Wakanda is going to need an ally. So obviously, right now Wakanda is in a standing where the rest of the world wants what Wakanda has, and obviously Wakanda is not going to give them that. Very specifically, Ramonda mentions it's not that we fear what vibranium can do; we fear what you can do with vibranium. So, and that's the reason why they don't, they don't trade vibranium for other goods and things like that, just because of the how strong that metal is and so forth. So that's going to be interesting into phase 5 and so forth. What they end up doing with that bit.
Alrighty. If that's it, or do you want to do post credits now, or you have something
Yeah,
else?
yeah. Let's do post credit. So the first part of before we get into the main shocking one, if you will, but like so they kind of Mbaku, and you speculate that Shuri the queen now. What's going on with the Black Panther? Obviously, she's the Black Panther, but that ceremony that they have where they're transitioning the power of Black Panther, and somebody takes it, and obviously somebody challenges for the throne of Black Panther, um, and Duke Kingston's Mbaku character. So you say they're waiting on Shuri, but then he comes up. He said she's not going to make it. Essentially, she has something else going on, and then he's like, "I challenge for the throne
Oh, that was a
of
little,
Wakanda."
strong there.
Sorry, I accidentally. I challenge for the throne. So, like, I mean, I don't know if that's just assumed that he's gonna get the throne because there's nobody else steps up right at that moment. They kind of leave it though, but it's not that they mean that no one's stepping up to challenge him, but it just they kind of leave it at the end the scene there. So it kind of makes you think, okay, so is he gonna be now the ruler of Wakanda, the king of Wakanda? Is he also going to be some like obviously is he going to be the Black Panther, because that's essentially what that ritual is for, to name the new Black Panther, uh, one way or another. It's whether over a duel or someone just saying we're not going to challenge you, you are the Black Panther. So that's kind of confusing too. So is he going to also be the Black Panther now? What's going to happen with that? Because technically Shuri didn't like remove the herb from her body. She still has those powers. Um, so yeah, that's something that What are your thoughts on that? Like, what do you think that could they be
Yeah, I
able to do
don't
with
look
that?
too much into that. I mean, certainly he could be king and she just is Black Panther, but I don't think, because in that ritual they take away her powers so that for that ritual they would take away her powers so she could fight
Right,
fairly. But
right,
even in Black Panther 1, T'Challa was already Black Panther before he had that ritual, before T'Chaka died. He was already Black Panther. So it's not like he fought T'Chaka, or at least they didn't show it or say it. He didn't fight T'Chaka to have the right
Well,
to
that gets
eat the
passed
Hachu
on
herb.
from lineage. So, like, if your father was a Black Panther, passes away, it goes to you, but you can still they still have to do that ceremony, and at that ceremony, all the tribes either just say, "Okay, we allow you to be the Black Panther," or one of our people will step up to challenge you for the throne. And obviously, in the first one, you see the man ape, M'Baku, come to challenge him, and then he loses the challenge, M'Baku, that is, and that's how um, you see T'Challa keeping the throne and keeping the mantle of Black Panther.
Right. And I'm not saying that you're wrong that that's not going to happen in the future with M'Baku. I'm just saying I just don't see it that way. Certainly could
No,
happen
I'm
that
speculating. I'm like, what does that
yeah,
mean? I'm just
yeah.
curious. So, like,
Yeah,
yeah,
like, it certainly could happen. I just don't
because
see
I'm
it
kind
that
of
way.
connecting the dots with what we've seen in the past for that ritual. Like, what
Mhm.
does that exactly mean? It's interesting.
Yeah, I
because
only
they,
took it that they were going to do the ritual because I don't even think that M'Baku, like if she was there, I don't think M'Baku would have even have challenged her. I think he would
no,
have.
sure,
Yeah, I
but
think he would
obviously
have just
she
had a respect
personally,
for her and then just would have gone forward. But I think they just did it as a, oh, this was a ritual thing and she's not there. So I think it was kind of played off for laughs. Personally, how I feel it. Not to say again, I'm not saying that your speculation is wrong or they can't happen that way, but I feel like it was just played off for laughs that she's not there because she's doing something else right now and it's important to her. They could do that ritual later off camera or again like I don't see him wanting to actually challenge her, but he could not to it's not, I wouldn't put it past his personality to do so, but at the same time I think he's been through enough between and then also just sure he's been through enough. I think he's gonna like just be chill with it and just continue on, but that's just how I see it. But again, if it happens and he happens because I don't like I don't want to undersell that he could just at this ceremony not say I challenge the throne and then they just say that he's king, but I don't expect him to get the heart-shaped herb either. I don't expect Shuri to give up the heart-shaped herb just because she wasn't there, and there or I don't expect there to be two Black Panthers either. So I just think he was just playing it off. I think the moment was just playing it off for laughs slash, just setting up that she'd rather be because the whole point of her leaving was to go actually mourn her brother and burn her funeral garb that she hadn't done yet. That was the whole point of her not being there, and then setting up the actual reveal of the post credit scene with Nakia coming out with a young boy, and then stating that that was actually the son of T'Challa and Nakia, which he was kept in secret. But apparently, Ramonda knew. Like I
yeah,
guess.
she met him. That's what they said. They tell her. Nakia says because Shuri asked, did my mom know?
Mhm,
And she's like, yes, she knew of him and she met him.
mhm. So
Um,
yeah, the whole idea, I guess they all agreed, I mean, at least between Nakia and T'Challa, to that they want to keep their son away from Wakanda, away from the throne and all the pressures of the kingdom and all of that sort of thing, and raise him away from that. Um, but they also had a funeral for him, like or their own little private funeral. She didn't show
mhm,
up to the funeral because of their son and
mhm,
because they again agreed to just that she shouldn't show up between T'Challa and Nakia. So they had their own little thing going on there, and they're in Haiti, by the way.
yeah,
Um, there, so this was a remote area, just somewhere away from Wakanda. But yeah, like that's the whole thing. And I don't the way I take that post credit scene is it's more of I don't see it as a possible, oh, they're going to put him on the Young Avengers or something like that. Like he's like 6 or something like that,
mhm,
5 years old. By the time, well, one, like if they're waiting for this kid in particular to grow up old enough to be a Black Panther in a Young Avengers setting, it's gonna be a long while before that
mhm,
happens. um One, two, they could go the route of doing something really wacky and crazy that people wouldn't expect, and have him age up super fast through just a time skip, or maybe he goes into the future with a time machine and comes back and he's all grown or something stupid like that. I don't expect that. I think this is just more of a one, T'Challa's legacy lives on. Two, it is a possible like if Letitia Wright or even M'Baku, maybe they have Winston Duke become, maybe he does become Black Panther at some point. But even then, like if it's 10 or 15 years from now and the MCU is still going strong, they can legitimately say that T'Challa is back as Black Panther because as his name is T'Challa, this his son. So they could bring him back and say this young man is now going to be the new Black Panther, replacing whoever is Black Panther at the time, or maybe again, we don't know how long Letitia's going to be MCU. She can do one movie, she can do five, whatever it is, however long that takes. What we don't know the future, but I think it's just kind of a built-in insurance of, well, if it's still going and we could bring back T'Challa, but not the one that passed away. It's just going to be his son, and then we're going to have a male Black Panther named T'Challa come back and be in the MCU properly at some point in the future. It's just
Right.
that's how I see it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Like I think this for sure makes it feel like so they're not going to recast T'Challa in general.
Right.
Like we were speculating, maybe they'll wait like 4 or 5 years. So, but this just sets up that they're not going to actually recast T'Challa, because if they recast T'Challa, it's like, wait, what was the point of this scene? Like you have, like they, that it would just completely destroy any, because especially this movie, it would just completely like discredit this entire movie. It's like, what was the point of anything? You can't do it now. So I think that's established now for sure that even. And like to your point, like if MCU is still going strong in 10, 15 years from now, at that point, they can always, time skip in a sense where he's like instead of being like 16, he could be like 21, 22 or whatever. And he can be the Black Panther, T'Challa, King T'Challa of the Black Panther. So yeah, I agree with you for sure. Interesting. So that kid that ends up being his son. He's actually one of the kids in when Ramonda goes to Haiti to get Nakia. He's one of the kids that goes to get Nakia to like that to get her attention that someone's here to see her. I don't know if you remember that.
No, I wasn't paying that much attention at that point, so I didn't really.
Yeah, because he looked from because when they showed him, I was like, hey, that's the kid, one of the kids. When Ramonda first gets to Haiti into that school, so yeah, that was so he technically was in the. He had 2 scenes in the movie.
So it's possible that she didn't say anything to him because she probably hadn't seen him since he was a baby, so she didn't recognize how he looks as however old he is.
Right. Any other final thoughts as we wrap up here?
No, not really. My only thing is like this whole mutants thing. Like, of course, like there's a whole bunch of takeaways for this movie, but like I said, I'm not at a point where I want to rank or like when we get to phase 4 tier list, I guess I'll have to decide how I feel about the movie. But right now, I'm not ready to rank it. It's just too soon. I do like it. I would say in general that I like the first movie better, just overall. But they have 2 different feels. So the first movie was a very big cultural impact. It was a very cultural movie. It was important for Black culture in general. That type of movie was groundbreaking, but this movie was more emotional movie, and I totally get, and especially with that comment we had early in the show. I know some people wouldn't like this movie as much or just at all, just because of it doesn't have a lot of action in it. Yes, there's fighting, but this was, like I said, it was more of an emotional movie for all of the grief and the loss and so on. Very, very well written movie, but some people might like Black Adam more because of the punching and the explosions and all of that stuff. And if they're into that sort of thing, and they weren't, especially if they weren't heavily invested in the first Black Panther, they're not. This movie isn't going to sell them on Black Panther if you weren't into the first one for whatever reason. So this movie ain't gonna like make you a Black Panther fan. You'd have to have liked the first movie at least. So I can see some people not or preferring to watch Black Adam over Black Panther, but to each his own.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I thought Black Adam was entertaining. To me, this is good in a different way. I like this better than Black Adam. Don't get me wrong, but I didn't dislike. I thought Black Adam was entertaining. But they're like they're different. They're different movies. They're not real. I mean, obviously they're both comic book movies, but the setup and the whole process is just different. So. Though definitely that's for sure. But yeah, that's a wrap for our episode. Please, obviously, if you've missed any previous episodes, check us out on the Barroom Network on YouTube and any audio podcast platforms that you'd like to use, whether that's Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean. You can also listen to all our other shows like Bulls Gold, like Carl told you to listen to Bulls Gold. Listen to all the Bears content we got going on right now. Justin Fields has the city hyped because the Bears finally have a quarterback that's good for the first time, and I think Sid Luckman from like
ever.
Sid Luckman from like 1950, who was a Hall of Famer. I think that's the last time the Bears had a good quarterback. So it's been that long, I guess.
in everyone's lifetime, basically.
Yeah, basically, anyone that is old enough to really remember, I suppose. But yeah, so check out I guess everything Barroom has to offer. But yeah, that's a wrap for us today. Appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.
All right, have a great evening.